Hey y'all. Hey. It's me, Paris. For the people who've been on here, y'all know who I am. However, I cannot assume that everybody knows who I am, so I will not assume it. Therefore, I will introduce myself every time. How y'all doing? Hope you guys had an amazing weekend. I hope you did something nice for yourself. I hope you had a restful weekend. Or if you had a lot to do, I hope you had a productive weekend and you got things done. And if you didn't, give yourself grace because there's always another day, right? Um, yeah, I had a good weekend. I had a rough start to the week. I don't listen, y'all. Y'all don't get me to tell y'all about my squirrel story. You know what? We're talking about a PTSD today. My squirrel story might actually matter in this frame of mind, but I don't think I'm gonna talk about it uh, right now because I want to get so much done in a short period of time. We're still in my anxiety series, and the funny part about it is that I did not realize that there were so many pieces to anxiety. I told you there's no way that I could have got it done in a whole month. However, we're coming up on the end of this month. Can you believe September's almost done already? I know I missed that one week because I was not feeling well, but I just didn't realize I was running out of time like this. Like, matter of fact, uh, wow, Thursday is the last day of the month. So I have one more time to talk about anxiety before I end this series. And it's went by so fast. So hopefully I can get a lot covered today. The thing about it is that with the anxiety thing, I definitely didn't realize that it covers so many big things like OCD, social anxiety, general anxiety. I just didn't realize that it was so deep. I didn't know about anxiety. I didn't know these things were all covered under it. Even phobias, that's all anxiety, which is what we're going to talk about next week. And so it definitely can be explored more. I thought about extending it another month. However, I like to keep stuff fresh. And if we need to have come back to it, we can. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying this because I think we deal with it way more than we know. And I want to bring this conversation to light because we don't think it's in our house. We don't think it's in our families. We don't think it's pertains to us. And therefore, we don't do enough about it. And my goal is to get us to start talking about it. Um, Before I start, I do want to remind you guys, if anybody who's new, I want to remind you all, I am not a licensed psychiatrist as of yet. I'm in school, but I am a very passionate advocate for mental health um, and an advocate to talk about these things that are plaguing our communities, these things that we think we think certain things just happen, and I'm here to let you know that's not true. All of this stuff is explainable and explainable. Is that even a word? If it's not, forgive me. But all this stuff can be explained, and we have to talk about the underlying roots to these issues. And if we start to talk about these roots, we can kind of get down to some type of plan and be able to execute a plan, right? So I was gonna try to wait for a few people to come on. I shared it on my regular page. I've shared with a couple people. I just think people come on when they need to. So I'm gonna just start because anybody who's coming on for the replay, type in replay so I can know that you're here. If you're coming on for the replay, I want to make sure that you guys don't just get a whole bunch of fluff at the beginning of the video. Hey, mom. So today we are, like I said, we're talking about PTSD. We're tackling PTSD. I know you have heard of it. And I know most people know the definition for it, but I really wanted to get kind of and get deep into it and dig into it. I also want to break up the thought process that PTSD can only happen to veterans of war, people who've experienced war. That is very false. Is very false. That is not true. At one point in time, I think that the term came up, became popular when they started to refer to veterans as having it, and people started to see them being startled easily, not being able to sleep, having all these extreme responses to as a result of them serving in war and seeing things that's unimaginable. And don't get me wrong, a lot of veterans do have it, right? However, it is not limited to them. You just heard about it because we had to start discussing what they were experiencing when they were coming home. And so I'm going to give definitions so that we can be clear about what we're talking about. And then we're going to go ahead and go into, a couple of different things. And then, just kind of, I'm trying to be as thorough as I can with this, less than an hour. I'm trying to keep it shorter, but it's just so much depth to this. So PTSD it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a mental health condition that is triggered by a traumatic event that you're either experiencing it, or so that means you're involved in it, or that you have witnessed. So I want to make sure that we understand it could be one or the other. It is a traumatic event that you have experienced, meaning that you are part of that event, or that you have witnessed. For example, if somebody was physically abused, that's a traumatic event. So that person would be dealing with the PTSD. But then even their children who witnessed the event, even if they had not necessarily been hit themselves, they are also going to suffer or can suffer from PTSD. And so that is the definition I wanted to give. There are so many definitions that there is, but I think that's the one that I wanted to make sure that I definitely wanted to. I think that one is the best one that I heard. That just kind of sums up what I want to say about it. Again, this is not something I came up with at all. I just want to make sure I'm clear about it, right? In the past, people used to call it shell shock before they really had a name for it. And again, they used to associate it with World War One. That's kind of what people remember it coming out as, or combat fatigue after World War II. But again, it can happen to anyone, man or woman, any culture, any age. Okay. It is really, what am I trying to say? It's really much more widespread than I think anybody seems to know, because what is the biggest problem? That is misdiagnosed, right? And so most people are too ashamed to talk about it, or when they do talk about it, it is minimized because people don't share all of their symptoms and the frequency of it, right? So then we have it underreported, underdiagnosed, and people don't even really know what it is, and they think it's normal. Again, these are what these conversations are for, so you can realize that if these are certain things that you deal with, it's okay. And we take a deep breath. We're going to talk about them, right? And it's funny because I was on TikTok and YouTube earlier, and this weekend too, and then I was going through some things, and I saw a couple of situations that I'm not going to bring up that were great examples of PTSD that are intergenerational. I know that term, everybody doesn't know what that means, but it just means it's passed from generation to generation. And I see the effects of PTSD passed from one generation to another, and people being unaware that they are carrying it, and also that they're passing it along through not only genetics, but they're also passing it along through the nurturing, the experience that person, the environment, the person that is that they live with, that they are family with, is experiencing. Remember, it's not just what you experience, it's what you witness as well. So sometimes if somebody doesn't realize they're dealing with PTSD, it can transfer very easily because they start to behave in dysfunctional ways because it's not been treated. And then they then cause harm unknowingly to their families or their loved ones. And then now you have a cycle. Okay. And I see this so often, and we don't call a thing, right? We have to get to the bottom of it, which is why I want to talk about this. I'm not going to bring up those situations. They are very much in media right now. I could bring them up, but that's not my business to highlight those particular situations. I just want to say a lot of family drama is not talked about because we don't deal with these issues, right? And so I'm here to expose the shame behind it. It's no shame. Most of us have seen it. Most of us have dealt with it. Most of us have dealt with it at some point in our life, and some of us are really still dealing with it, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Okay, so I'll give you examples of some traumatic events. Another like really basic definition was just being exposed to one or more traumatic events, right? And so I'll give you examples of them, right? Of course, we said war is one, but I think I gave an example of physical abuse, like if somebody suffered physical abuse or somebody witnessed the suffering of physical abuse, though that is a traumatic event. Sexual assault. And that doesn't even have to be rape necessarily. It could be molestation. It could be attempted rape. When somebody is trying to force somebody to have unconsensual sex. Just the idea that somebody's being in that environment, that is a traumatic event, because now they have to think about the fact they had to fight and all those things. So that's one of them. A traffic accident. Being in an accident, is very traumatic, of course, and you don't even think about it. But sometimes, depending on whether even if someone is, hurt or not, even that the sound of the crash is enough to bring back flashbacks and be traumatic. So that's one of them. Bullying. I know you guys heard of that. Bullying is definitely a huge trigger to PTSD. It's definitely a traumatic event. We take it so lightly because a lot of us have experienced bullying, but just because you've experienced it and you've overcome it doesn't mean it didn't affect you. It doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic, and it doesn't mean it didn't have any effect, right? Let's see, here's another one. Robberies, right? Whether or not they actually took something from you, even the event of robbery, witnessing it and or experiencing it personally, that is traumatic. And that doesn't even mean physical robbery, right? It's so funny because I was researching this. Even if somebody scammed you out of money, let's talk about it. If somebody scammed you out of money, or somebody like said they were going to borrow money from you and never gave it back, depending on how much money it was, that is traumatic because it caused you to lose trust, and it is it really puts you in a situation where you have to recover from that. And how well you recover from that is another story. So I want to put out there. Another thing I thought was really cool was extreme poverty. Now it's funny because I did not hear that before. And that was like, so extreme poverty, that should make sense to you. Somebody who grew up, they didn't have running water, they didn't have plumbing, they lived outside, they didn't eat some days. That is actually, those are conditions that are definitely, you can understand that that's a traumatic thing. But I also want to go a different way. I want to say not just extreme poverty. Some other poverty situations can also cause PTSD, especially when it kind of trickles down, right? Like, so if it was always a thing of you trying to survive, you're in a survival mindset, that can cause PTSD because you're in a fight or flight mode all the time. You're in this idea that, I don't know what we're going to eat possibly today. Your parents might have not known. You might not know what you're going to eat. You might not know, you might not have, what's it called? That's called food security. Then it's also another thing called housing security. Like if you moved around a lot, that can be traumatic every time you have to move, especially if it's sudden. I've heard someone say, oh, we had to move. And sometimes we move and we put our clothes in garbage bags and we go in the middle of the night so that we wouldn't startle whoever we were with. That can definitely be traumatic and start to trigger things. And I think that person was saying that they have to, when they travel, unpack everything because that was a traumatic thing for them. So those are just a few examples. There are so many other examples. If you guys are on here and if you're watching the replay, go ahead and type in some examples that you know that are traumatic events. They all matter, right? There's not, let me talk about this. This is something I really want to say, and I want to be very transparent about it. Let's stop minimizing and or trying to regulate what somebody's traumatic event is, right? What we consider traumatic enough, right? I am sick of that, right? And it's not fair, and it's actually very insensitive, right? Because what you're doing, knowingly or unknowingly, is that you're minimizing somebody's experience. I've done it before, so I'm not exempt. But now that I know better, I'm going to do better. If somebody told you that they went through a hard experience and you think, oh, that's no big deal, I went through that 3 times over, and this, and that does not help. It does not change the fact that that was a traumatic experience to them. And who are you to tell them how fast they can heal? Who are you to tell them that wasn't a big deal? We got to be very, very careful with that, because it keeps people from not sharing. They don't want to share when they think that you're judgmental. When they share and you say, that's no big deal, I went through more of that. Man, I'm telling you, if I could take some words back, I have said things like that. And, it hurts me to think that I've said stuff like that. I'm very much more thoughtful about these things and making sure that I am not projecting my own experiences onto others when they tell me about how they feel. You should do the same. You can't say, well, I used to get whoopings, and so you can't tell me when you was beat with extension cord that was that big of a deal. You don't know what that person felt like. You don't know what happened in that person's home. So you need to be careful with that. You need to be way more empathetic, way less judgmental, and you want to think before you talk, because people might not remember all the details, but they will remember how you made them feel. So, that is very much re-traumatizing them. And you might not even realize you're part of that story, but if they remember when you made them feel less, like when I hear people talk about, oh, I was sexually assaulted and my parents didn't believe me, it breaks my heart for them. It breaks my heart, because you have a child here that told you, and how hard must it have been for them to admit that happened to them? And then when they told you, and a lot of times child sexual abuse happens close to the family, in the family, or a family friend, or somebody that you know and or trusted, or that your parent might trust. And so for you to tell them that and they don't believe you, I cannot imagine what that feels like. And so you re-victimize them. Hear me. When you do not acknowledge that their event was real. Do not tell them, oh, I've been through that, so it's no big deal. Listen, you're not healed either. Remember, we talked about that intergenerational trauma. This is a real thing. So I'm here to just talk about this and put it on the table, because I think that we're not conscious about what we're doing because we don't know what it is. So these are all events, traumatic events that trigger the PTSD. Remember I said being exposed to one or more of them, and it only takes one traumatic event for you to suffer from it, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to have more than one, but if you have more than one, you're in an increased risk to suffer more, right? Now, everybody doesn't have PTSD. I know that's not true. That's true. However, I have different thoughts that might differ from psychiatrists, that I'm not going to necessarily say in this particular live today. I have extreme thoughts that might not agree with what a lot of other people say. I just think a lot more people suffer from it than we are honest about. And I'm going to leave it at that. But when there's a thing called complex or severe PTSD. And that one is where you see, when you think of some of the war veterans, and they have, it's prolonged. And it's something that seems like it just will never get better. And they classify that it occurs for over a month. I think that's a very low period of time. I think that anything, in my opinion, over 6 months, right? Because sometimes you could have a situation where somebody passes, and it's a very, you witness the death of somebody, or, even just a loved one that you really love, that somebody that's close to you passed away. We already know you can have grief and depression. But I also believe that you can have PTSD. And even if you like watch that person die, meaning like if they were really sick and you watch them breathe their last breath, I absolutely believe people suffer from PTSD of that. It is very traumatic to watch somebody die in front of you. So I believe that that's definitely something that can affect things. I also believe growing up in the hood, that is traumatic. I don't care what anybody say. When you see people getting shot, or you hear about somebody your age being shot and you were 12, you knowing that your lights can be cut off one day and then the next day you have to go to school. You not knowing if you're going to eat tonight, or some people go to school literally to eat lunch. We talk about these things like it's normal, and it's really not normal. It happens way more. And so we just talk about the we talk about the economic factors, but we don't talk about the psychological factor. When you have, you ever heard of something that's called like, what is it called? What is the word? Jesus. We talk about, I know you guys, so I'm in Chicago, and a lot of times people hear about the idea of, they used to call it Chirac. And I hate that terminology, but what they were trying to say was that sometimes when you're in the ghettos and the hoods where they have extreme violence, that the kids tested to have the same stress levels and the same PTSD of kids that live in war-torn states. So we're saying that the kids in some of these most crime-ridden neighborhoods experience the same levels that people experience in Israel, or wherever these places, people in the Middle East, places where they're fighting. If you think about that, there are bombers over there, and of course they are going to have the PTSD out of this world, even just experiencing it. But you're saying that our kids, people, a lot of us grew up in these areas. We're not going to acknowledge that we too suffer from PTSD. Now, maybe it didn't rule over your life. Maybe you're not, like, it's not crippling for you, but to say that you have not dealt with it on some level, we have to be very thought process. I'll give an example for me. We grew up in certain neighborhoods, and so I remember to this day, I can't do fireworks. I don't like fireworks unless I'm watching a fireworks show at like Navy Pier or something, a big one. But when people do individual fireworks, my nerves, I cannot. It scares me. I hate driving through certain neighborhoods around July 4th. I shake. I don't like it. I think there are gunshots. I jump. I'm startled. I'm uneasy. And I didn't even realize that till somebody pointed out. I was like, why are you so jumpy? And I didn't realize I don't like those loud noises. Because before, you don't know what those things are. You don't know what it is. And so that's just certain things that you don't even realize that you're affected by. Hey, Deborah, it is true. And we don't talk about this enough. Here's another thing. COVID. COVID happened. So everybody might not agree with me when I say this, but if you have witnessed anybody that you know that died from COVID, if you know anybody that suffered COVID, if you yourself have suffered COVID, if anybody has been isolated in the house watching the news, you're going to tell me this is not affecting people and it doesn't call PTSD? Are you really going to tell me that? Are you really wanting to say after this thing is over and while it's happening that this is not affecting us? And some are coping with it better, right? Again, these could be small things. This could be something that lasts for a day or a couple of days and be done with. It could last less than a month. But for some people, it's going to last much longer. And we need to talk about it. And we need to be honest about it. You yourself has witnessed some people who are not the same since COVID happened. And they might have not even gotten it themselves, or they might have. These are things that have changed in their personality because they have witnessed something that has changed the way they see things and view things in their mind. It is trauma. It's traumatic to watch all these people die. It's not normal. It's not normal. We shouldn't take it as normal. And yes, we say, oh, we're grateful that we're here, but we don't understand there's even a such thing as survivor's grief, survivor's remorse. People are feeling bad that their big mom died, their brother, their sister, their spouse, their child, when they're still here. That's all in the same umbrella. So I'm just talking about it because I want us to realize how widespread it is, how this is not far away from your house, and how you might even be experiencing it, right? They'll give you some symptoms. Some symptoms that there are nightmares, flashbacks. I know you guys heard about that with the war stuff, but that's not just that. If people who've dealt with sexual abuse, I've heard about them having flashbacks all the time. Car accidents, like I told you. Sometimes I've known people that are in the car with me, and then we hear a loud sound, and they're like, "Oh my God!" and they brace because they remember what it was like to be in that car accident. I'll give you another example about me. I have been in a car accident before too, and I had my car spin around on the snow one time, and I was on the expressway. My car spun out of control, and it faced the oncoming traffic, and it was trucks and cars, and they were all coming near me. And thank God I was not hit. Thank the Lord I didn't get hit. But it was a miracle that I literally just sat there and nobody hit me. Mind you, this was that big snowstorm, and I couldn't see. The visibility was bad, and I didn't hit the sides. And these cars and these trucks are near, and they should have hit me. Big trucks all right behind me, but God's grace literally kept them from hitting me. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm going to tell you something. It has caused something in me, even though I didn't get into an accident. I remember pulling off the expressway. They let me get off. I pulled off the expressway, and I sat in the car and cried for 45 minutes. I was hyperventilating. I had a whole anxiety attack. Anybody who knows me at that moment in time, I was crying. I could not control myself. I couldn't drive at that moment. I was so overwhelmed, right? Okay. Because it just happened to me. I was very high anxiety at that moment. And as a result, I don't like to drive in the snow. Anybody who knows me knows that as well. When it's snowing, man, if you ever hydroplaned in the rain, I'm the same way. I don't like to drive when it rains severely. Like, I've been in situations, I've seen a car, and again, we're talking about witnessing car crashes. I've seen car crashes, boom, 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 boom. And it does something to you. I tense up when I drive now. See, I can't talk about y'all, but I'm going to speak on me because I know this is much more common than we talk about, right? And these are the things, and these are the symptoms. So I just talk about flashbacks, right? That's one of them. Severe anxiety, and because again, this is all under anxiety. PTSD is definitely under the anxiety umbrella, which I didn't know. I'm learning something every day. And so, but yes, so severe anxiety around these events, or just period in life. Some of them, people just have anxiety because of these events, right? Sleeping issues, insomnia. We are talking about the nightmares, just not sleeping well, never feeling fully rested. Definitely a symptom of PTSD. Hyperarousal. So I thought hyperarousal was just like sexual, but I didn't realize it meant that you were easily startled, and you were easily like you hear something, it's like, or somebody touches you and you're very sensitive. And I didn't realize that's me too. Like, I'm so easily startled, right? And so it's very interesting because we don't realize that these are signs of that, right? Okay. Nervousness, right? Extreme nervousness, shaky hands. Have you ever talked to somebody after they experience something, their hands are extremely shaky? But sometimes when you have PTSD, you wonder why they're dealing with that, and it's because they have an extreme version of it or complex, and it's like they're always like that. Increased heartbeat, outburst of anger. I thought that was interesting, right? Because I didn't really associate the two at first, but absolutely, because they're frustrated because they cannot get control of the situation. It is very unpredictable. They could be fine one moment, and then the next moment they're thrust into a memory. They're thrust into the idea of it, and it makes them feel crazy. And so outburst of anger, the littlest things set them off because now I feel out of control. I don't feel like I control this at all. So now I'm angry. And so the littlest things set them off. So that's a symptom. Avoidance of anything that will remind them of the situation. Like I told you guys about the fireworks. I avoid Small, like going in neighborhoods where they pop a lot of fireworks. I avoid them at all costs. I don't want to be around it. But that's a small thing, but like, but also another avoidance is when we talk about certain things, avoiding the conversation and or self-medication to numb the feeling that you feel in these traumatic memories come up, right? That's a big one, right? I talked about self-medication and escapism. And so when somebody does not know how to deal with these things and it comes to them and it floods in whenever it wants to, unfortunately, one of the main things that they're doing is they're going to try to take alcohol and or drugs, or they can use food, anything you can be addicted to, food, sex, any of these things, overworking, to try to numb out those feelings that you feel when you get thrust into a traumatic memory from nowhere. So that's something to be thoughtful about. I thought this one was really good too. Intimacy issues, right? And again, you want to think sexual when we say intimacy issue, which it definitely can be sexual. But I'll go further. Intimacy is just a relationship, a closeness to somebody, and it does not have to be sexual. You should have intimacy between you and your child, and or you and your parent. You should have intimacy between you and your spouse. You should have intimacy between you and your best friend or your friends, right? There should be intimacy levels in all those relationships, just closeness, right? And with that being said, if you have problems connecting to someone after some traumatic event has happened, I mean, you notice it's long lasting, that can be a symptom and a sign of PTSD, along with a lot of those other symptoms, right? Um, I said about the easily startled. That's one that I didn't even connect at first, but yeah, that's a real one. Um, um, and then here's another one. Someone said, I didn't understand this one at first. Personality deformation. What that means is that somebody's personality takes a drastic shift, right? It changes, and it just seems like it's extreme, and it changes for the worse. They're more closed off. They're more, angry. Um, they just seem like to be a completely different person, and or they almost seem like they deal with a personality disorder as a result of this traumatic event. That's definitely possible, and it's definitely a sign and a symptom of PTSD. So it's possible. So and then you know what? I didn't really want to go into this, but I might as well just throw a few a minute. This is not just adults. This, unfortunately, I wish it's not just adults. It is children that suffer from these things too. Unfortunately, as young as 4 years old, as young as they are able to talk. Okay, and so their symptoms are slightly different. And as a parent and or a loved one, it is good that you are able to recognize, even as a teacher. I'm sure they teach you this in school already, but it's good to know some of these signs. Again, I am not a licensed professional. I'm just in research of it, and as I research, I share with you guys because it's very interesting to me, and we need to talk about it because it affects us way more than we want to admit that it affects us. Some of the symptoms for children is bedwetting. It's a big one, especially if they're bedwetting past a certain age, right? Um, you know, Oftentimes that shows that they are having a hard time dealing with something that's in their memories that they can't talk about really, right? So especially, I mean, all our kids bedwet, but to a point where it's like after a certain age. I remember a friend of mine, I won't ever say her name, but I remember she said casually one day, yeah, I went to bed until I was in my preteens. And I was just surprised to hear that. But I also knew some of the traumatic things that she went through. And it made sense after a while. And I didn't even realize that this was a byproduct of that. I did not connect the two. And now that I'm in this field, I am connecting it. And I'm like, wow, that is part of it. Okay. The losing the ability to or just being unable to talk after a reasonable age, meaning so after most kids start talking around 2 or 3, maybe even 4. Sometimes a traumatic event that happened to a kid and they either stop talking or they just never they never talk because of it. Like if they're supposed to start talking at a certain age and they just don't. Sometimes we think it's developmental. Some of it is traumatic issues and events that they is PTSD. So that's something to think of. And again, I'm not saying these things are for sure. I'm saying If you notice any of these things and you have a feeling about it, go see a doctor, go see a psychiatrist, so you can get your child evaluated, so you can get yourself evaluated and see this is truly what you do suffer with. Kids can act out during play the traumatic event. Now, a lot of times you see this on TV when you see people talking to kids about if they witnessed a murder or something, and they're able to draw out this really bloody event. That's really always sad. Or sometimes, you'll hear the school called because, little Joey did something in playtime that was extremely inappropriate. And it's because he experienced something that was extremely inappropriate. So those are certain things to look for. And then the last one is unusually clingy. We want our kids to be close to us, of course. We want our kids to want love and affection, and we give it to them. But if you know that you are giving your child all the love, hugs, and kisses, and then they're extremely clingy to you, and it's just all of a sudden, you might want to look into that, because it could be because they are feeling uncovered. They're feeling not protected because something happened. And so these are just things that could cause those type of issues. Not saying it is. So you see how like a lot of this stuff is very, it's not far from your house. It's not. We have to stop thinking this is everybody else's situation and it's not ours. It's not our community. I think we completely dropped the ball. We want to talk about some of the violence in our communities. We talked about this stuff with the riots. We talk about the gun violence in our communities and different things. And we want to blame, parents and all these things. And rightfully so. But if you don't talk about the environments in which they were raised and understand the psychological issues that they are suffering as a result, you won't understand why it persists. You act as though you can turn a light on and change how people. You act as though you can go and talk to somebody and say, stop doing wrong, because you know better. And then they're going to just stop. When there is psychological issues that have developed over time that are causing them to behave in the way that they do. This is not something that happened overnight, and it's not going to be something that's fixed overnight. I would love if world peace was achieved today. I would love if hunger went away. I would love if the ghettos stopped being toxic. I would love if people stopped with the violence. I would love if we had no more mass shootings. I would love if, all these horrible things just stopped. But the reality is this stuff did not start out of nowhere. There are causes to it, to most of it. And, especially if they don't have a psychological disorder, like if they're a sociopath or something, they're just born with some chemical imbalance in their brain. If they're not like that, most of this stuff is the environment that they grew up in and or experiences, traumatic experience that they have dealt with. So if we want to talk about that and be honest about it, is if we want to fix our communities, we have to get real with what's happening. Just as you are sad to see the kids that are in Israel that witnessed the bombing of their families, you should be the same type of sad knowing that little Ray is he's going to jail now because he robbed somebody. And the backstory, though, is that his mom was on crack and his dad was never there, and he didn't have food security, and he was hungry a lot of nights. And so he joined the gang. When he was like 9, they recruited him. They jumped him on the way home from school, and now he's running guns at 10 years old. And now he's just trying to take care of his family, because now this is all he knows. He's watched people get beat up. I'm not making excuses, y'all. I'm telling y'all, this is some people's lives. So then when we say things like, oh, they just need to get it together, how so? Please provide a map to how it should happen. This is why I'm passionate about talking about mental health issues, because it's not far from our communities. It's real. It's actually much closer than you think. So we need to start having these real conversations about what's plaguing our communities, and then start taking steps towards healing. We have to start taking steps. I'm not saying live in the past. What I am saying is you have to acknowledge a thing in order to heal a thing. You have to acknowledge what happened and be honest about it in order to be open to healing and treatment and help. If I have anything to do with it, I will make therapy and or mental health resources available to so many people. This is already in the works because I know what it will help. I know that this can cause healing amongst generations. So I'm really passionate about it because I want us to understand this. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. This is something that is definitely not a easy thing to talk about. It's not something you want to admit, but we definitely want to be honest about it and get the conversation going so we can help people who might be suffering in silence. No more suffering. It's 2021. When we leave this year, it's enough of suffering in silence. There's help. There are resources. Let's talk about it. Let's get the help we need to heal our families, heal ourselves, and be better. So I hope you guys got something from this. The extreme PTSD can be debilitating. It can disrupt life. It can affect everything. It can keep people from working. Look, sometimes you think people are lazy. I even know that a lot of people that suffer from PTSD that you don't think about are homeless people. You don't know what happened in their life. And a lot of times you take the time to listen to their story, you'll hear that they've had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy that happened, and it just knocked them off their feet and they weren't able to get back up. And you think they're weak, they need to just pick themselves up. You don't understand. You have no idea. It's very insensitive take on that. So just always be kind, be empathetic, care about somebody more than yourself. Next time you get a chance, ask somebody, like, well, if you don't mind sharing your story, what happened to you? You just never know. You just never know. So, I'm invested in us healing, and PTSD is a real thing, and we got to talk about it. The good part is that there is ways to manage it. There are tools that you can use through therapy and or even outside of therapy that can help with these feelings, because sometimes when you're in this PTSD in extreme cases, you have a lot of pessimism about just what the future looks like because you think you're going to have this thing forever. You don't feel like you're not interested in interacting with people because you just feel like you just never know when something can happen. You don't really want to interact because you just feel like you're almost an alien around everybody else because they don't understand what this makes you feel like. You're trying to do things that's going to move you forward, but you have issues with concentrating. These are all things that are symptoms, and it can be helped if you get the help. And if anybody that's listening to me think that they are dealing with this and they don't feel like they have resources or don't know what to do next, definitely reach out to me. I'm not a therapist, but I do know therapists I can refer you to. Just let me know, send me a message. And I'm going to start just always posting my resources so that you guys are aware of, more places, even if you don't want to reach out to me personally, that you're aware of how you can get the help that you need to. There are even groups that you can go to that help out with dealing with certain things and being a survivor from certain situations. And there's tons of, there's certain things that you can get, even medication that can help with some of it, because some of the stuff can be psychological, chemical imbalance that are causing you to feel agitated and constantly nervous and anxious. Again, so many different type of tools in therapy and or ways that people can help you once you get into therapy. So you know how I feel about that. But let's just have the conversation so we can heal. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I'm gonna end it here. If you guys are just coming on, catch the replay. It's going to be posted on YouTube and Facebook. And we're going to go from there. Please share this with someone because I'm telling you, somebody is dealing with it, whether you know or not. So if you share it, somebody can possibly get the help that they need. It's not about me. It's about helping somebody else, right? Because I already know this. So it's about helping somebody. So I want you guys to have an amazing day. I will be back Thursday. Oh my God, I can't believe it's the last day of the month on Thursday. And the last day we'll be talking about anxiety. So we're going to dig in, and hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully this has helped somebody, and hopefully we can move forward. All right. Talk to you guys later. Oh, and don't forget, you are enough. I'm going to say it every single time. You're enough for what? You're enough to invest the energy into self-evaluating and looking at your family and your friends group and seeing if, these things apply to you. Because you're enough to get relief. You deserve it. So never forget that. Never forget it. Never change yourself because of how you feel. It might feel a little dark today, but trust me, it can and will get better. But you first have to believe you are enough. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you later.